In the first part, we visited Zurich, the secret capital of Switzerland. As the Rhine falls, the young river plunges into the depths near Schaffhausen. The Swiss shore of the Lake Constance greets you with its timeless beauty. And St. Gallen, together with the famous monastery library, is considered a world cultural heritage. Appenzell is famous for cattle breeding, dairy products, and as a destination for tourists. Küsnacht is famous because of Wilhelm Tell, who became a national hero. The Lake Lucerne, with the 4 founding sites of the Swiss Confederation. In 1871, the first European rack railway was opened on Rigi. Lucerne, the important trading centre on the way over the Alpine pass of Saint Gotthard, by boat to Alpnachstad, and by pack railway to Pilatuskulm. St-Moritz, the most modern winter sports resort in the world, now also popular in summer. The Glacier Express became world famous as the slowest express train in the world. Chur is the oldest city in Switzerland with its medieval old town. And Disentis with Baroque church and the mighty abbey of the Benedictines. The ancient stone houses in the difficult-to-access mountain areas of the Southern Alps. The castle town of Bellinzona is the gateway to Ticino, the southernmost canton. Locarno is situated on the Lago Maggiore, with its castle and pilgrimage church. The Mediterranean Lago Maggiore is captivating with subtropical islands. Lugano is an appealing Swiss financial centre with an Italian touch. And the Lago di Lugano, a natural beauty. So now we will take the world-famous Glacier Express from Disentis in the direction of Zermatt into the mountain world. And of course driven by rack and pinion. The slowest express train in the world manages the ascent to the next stop around the many curves with apparent ease. The Oberalp-Pass, with its dreamy mountain lake, is at 2,033 meters the highest point on this railway line. And in this area lies the source of the great Rhine River, which flows into the North Sea. But the trains don't stop here for long, but only until the corresponding opposite train arrives. The route now runs along the Oberalp Lake. Further along the high valleys, then down again, until a wonderful view opens up on a village deep in the Urseren Valley. Andermatt is reached. The old starting point to the passes of Saint Gotthard, Oberalp and Furka. Today it's also an attractive winter sports resort. The mountain village has succeeded in preserving its originality, and so the visitor always feels comfortable and well looked after. The deep faith and affiliation to the Roman Catholic confession is based here on the original rule of the monastery of Disentis. The continuation of the journey through the Urseren Valley leads through the depths of green valleys and up along snow-covered mountaintops on both sides of the valley. This section of the route is also single track, and stately cows graze on lush meadows. In Realp, we are now boarding the Furka-Mountain Railway, which is still a spectacular museum railway that services the mountain range in the summer months. The little train travels slowly between ice walls and the mountainsides, with the pieces of rock along the route emphasizing the caution required on this high mountain route. Even today, the route is only passable 3 months a year. During the rest of the year, snow and avalanches prevent its operation. In the height of the summer, torrents with meltwater rush into the valley next to the railway line. Next, the entrance to the Schynige Tunnel is reached. It's all downhill again. On the right, the view of the magnificent mountain road, and on the left, the stone protection walls, an impressive achievement of the construction engineers and workers. Past the little settlement of Aletsch, and through a wooded gorge with only room for a mountain stream, road and railway track. The train battles relentlessly on against the clear superiority of nature. Then the station Oberalp is reached, where the Furka base tunnel of the modern railway line ends. The trip over the mountain route is only just under 2 kilometers longer, but the shorter route through the tunnel can be made all year round. Now the journey leads through the Goms, and soon we're in the canton of Valais. Here, large health resorts are lacking, and tourism has more to do with nature. All shades of green abound, and slowly the track leads downwards again, deeper into the meandering valley. Fiesch is such a place, close to nature. And the quiet location at the foothills of the Goms is ideal for relaxation and recreation. The village church on a hill overlooks the well-preserved wooden buildings for which Valais is known. For centuries, people prayed for the threatening glacier to melt. The prayers were answered, and Fiesch was spared and became a successful and well-kept tourism community. And the scent of blossoming flowers and bushes abounds. But Fiesch is also the starting point of the Aletsch Arena in the mountains. A modern cable car leads to the first stage, the Fischer Alp at 2,200 meters. The gondola glides steeply upwards, and the view into the valley is stunning. The steep mountain slopes are still forested, and already deep down lies Fiesch, and the Rhone still flows as a wild mountain river. The first stage of the gondola ride is reached, the Fischer Alp. The view is overwhelming, as the forest line has already been crossed. After a short stopover, the ascent continues to the Eggershorn Mountain Station, which ultimately lies at an altitude of 2,893 meters. The cable car was ready and in service in 1966, and so an unbelievable wonder of nature became reachable within a 15-minute journey. From the Jungfraujoch, the longest glacier of the European Alps bends in a wide arc towards Valais, the Great Aletsch Glacier. On the way down into the valley, the main ice stream slowly merges with the neighboring glaciers, but its 23-kilometer length is continuously getting shorter. During the Little Ice Age around the middle of the 19th century, the glacier was much larger. The ice stream moves at a speed of up to 180 meters per year towards the Rhone Valley. However, due to the general warming since about 1879, it's lost a lot of its volume. Since then, the ice cover has decreased by up to 100 meters. But today we know that this growth and shrinkage has already occurred several times. The general feeling is that we humans must help to slow down this climate change and thus help preserve this extraordinary natural paradise. Here it's clear to see why the mountains in their majesty were once regarded as the seat of the gods. The train journey continues deep down through the narrow valley towards Zermatt, past small villages and tight against the steep slopes. The route is over a single track, and so there are several bypass sections, even beside the raging river. Now we have reached Brig. The historic merchant city in Upper Valais. This is where the main routes over several passes cross. A small town that was built on an old Roman settlement. With proud patrician and merchant houses. At that time, the influential merchant Caspar Jorog Stockholmer controlled the transport of goods over the Simplon Pass, owned the monopoly on salt, and had a Renaissance Baroque palace built. Several churches bear witness to the faith of the people who always gathered here for prayer before or after crossing the Alps. The Glacier Express leaves Brig and now runs along the mountain river Visper, and the track meanders, adapting to the surroundings. The last leg of this journey leads through the ever-narrowing Matter Valley. From Tash, only trains connect the end of the valley with the outside world. The Glacier Express ends here. The most famous holiday resort in Switzerland is located at the foot of a famous mountain, Zermatt and the Matterhorn. The rear village is the oldest part of the village, with barns, stables and storehouses from the 15th to the 19th century. The Hinterdorf Street is part of the original core of the village, where the traditional buildings made mainly of wood have been preserved. Visitors stroll through the car-free alleys, where the church and a large hotel form the centre, and a variety of souvenirs prove to be tempting purchases. The Roman Catholic church St. Mauritius, which was already mentioned in a document in 1285, was rebuilt several times and now shines in Baroque style. Magnificent houses surround the marketplace and the small park. In the local cemetery lie the graves of the remarkable mountaineers. And below, a small cemetery owned by the church was established. Due to tourism, Zermatt has almost become a small town. Directly opposite the station is where the Gornergrat-Railway begins. Soon the view is clear, and the fascinating mountain world, including the Matterhorn, accompany the train ride. The Gornergrat-Railway has already celebrated its 120th anniversary. The ride into the spectacular high mountain world with a view of Switzerland's unmistakable landmark is a fascinating experience. The route still seems risky today, but without this masterpiece of railway construction, most people would not be able to discover this paradise. From the Realp station at 2,211 meters above sea level, a small railway takes guests to the hotel of the same name with its stunning view. The train stops only briefly at the Rothorn station. Here, a height of 2,815 meters is already reached. What a view of the 4,000ers and the Riffel Lake, where people come to from all over the world to see the Matterhorn from this famous viewpoint with their own eyes. When there's no wind and the lake is ice-free, the east slope is reflected here. The trains climb up 9 kilometers with an incline of up to 200 per thousand, always accompanied by the stunning scenery of the mountain world. It was August the 20th, 1898, when the railway transported the first guests to this extraordinary natural paradise. Despite the steep incline, the rack railway runs briskly uphill for the last few meters. In the 19th century, railway engineers created the world's first fully electrified rack and pinion railway here, and 3 hotels were developed along the way. One last turn and the entrance to the terminus begins. Here again, guests are already waiting for the return journey to the valley. The terminus is at 3,089 meters above sea level, and behind the Matterhorn, several glaciers are visible. And above all, the Mountain Hotel. There is a clear view of 28 4,000-meter peaks, and especially one of the Matterhorn. An unforgettable experience that every visitor to the mountain ridge would want to capture and experience personally. It's a white dream world that captivates everyone. Here is the origin of the Gorner Glacier, the second largest continuous glacial area in the Alps. The highest mountain hotel in Switzerland houses the research station and observatories. Where else could climate change in the glacier world be better researched? The snow and ice world around the Matterhorn resembles a fairy tale land, which man has conquered through technology, but now has to protect through sensible measures. Interlaken is situated on a strip of land between the lakes Thun and Brienz, and is considered the cradle of Swiss alpine tourism. Following the connection by a railway line, a hotel construction boom started in 1859, and with it, international tourism. Interlaken was expanding and becoming a city. A tourist platform for visitors from all over the world who can reach the mountains and lakes from here using the ideal infrastructure. But the city itself also has typical Swiss quality to offer, which famous guests were already able to enjoy in the 19th century. From the very beginning, and in wise foresight, one side of the magnificent avenue was partly subject to a building ban just before the Victoria Jungfrau Grand Hotel was opened. And paragliders can land here on large spaces after taking off from the surrounding mountains. And so, no conflict between absolute luxury and action and fun. Also not apparent is that 5 municipalities, with their own administration, actually share the former alluvial land here. But Interlaken is, above all, a starting point for the surrounding mountain world. You take the train to nearby Wildeswil and board the cogwheel railway, which will reach the plateau, the Schynige Platte, in 50 minutes. The climb is thrilling. Even before the tree line, there is always a view of Lake Thun and Interlaken, which deep down already look like miniatures. The nostalgic-looking railway was opened as early as 1893 and enables guests to quickly reach a romantic, mountainous world. It's the Bernese Oberland, a mountainous region in the south of Lake Thun and Lake Brienz. A beautiful landscape whose imposing mountain peaks both enchant and humble the visitors. Inexorably, the rack railway conquers 1 meter of altitude after the other, and the surrounding mountains slowly seem to reach the same height. The railway line is ingeniously nestled against the mountain flanks, making it easier for the train to master the climb. There are ever more rock walls on the mountain side along the journey, and the valley side now already opens up dramatic views that are enthusiastically captured. One last bend and the final station at 1,967 meters altitude is reached. The change of passengers is rapid because in the valley, the next group are already waiting for the ascent. Initially, the trains were steam-powered, but subsequently this laborious means was replaced. The views in all directions are breathtaking. From this point, there is a panoramic mountain view which includes Eiger, Munch and Jungfrau. The circular hiking trails to Gumihorn, Tuba and Oberberghorn are possible. This alpine landscape was formed in the course of several ice ages, during which the layer of ice was sometimes up to 2,000 meters thick. Characteristic for the glacial landscape are sharp peaks and edges created by the glaciers. The powerful movements of the glaciers during subsequent ice ages then form the current shape of the high mountains. The river Aare connects Lake Thun and Lake Brienz. The exit to Lake Brienz begins at the Interlaken East River Station. The steamboat comfortably and leisurely passes the populated banks of the suburb until the lake begins. Berningen is the first village on the southern, rather undeveloped bank. The steamboat calls at several villages and thus repeatedly connects both shores of the lake. Today, Lake Brienz is a mountain lake that was separated from Lake Thun. We're approaching the first attraction of this lake cruise. From the boat station Giesbach Lake, one of the oldest funiculars in Europe leads up to the Grand Hotel, which is located directly by the waterfalls. Here, the waters of several mountain streams plunge about 400 meters over partially forested rock faces in 14 cascades down to the lake. The funicular railway takes visitors back down to the lake and the boat station. Upon request, the ship promptly appears. Now the liner crosses the lake once more at the eastern end to Brienz, the largest local community. Every harbour entrance is something of an adventure. Brienz is the centre of Swiss wood carving art, and visitors can enjoy the exhibited artworks on the riverside path and in the village. Here the people are proud of the way they live, and the views of the lake and the surrounding mountains where they feel as if they're protected. The inhabitants of Brun Alley always do their best to maintain the good reputation of their most beautiful alley in Europe with dignity. Finally, we visit the nearby open-air museum Ballenberg and see how the charcoal burners produce their charcoal according to old and laborious traditions. Here on show is a unique collection of houses from all over Switzerland of an incredible variety. More and more events of folklore are taking place here. And old mills and sawmills were also expertly rebuilt here. You can see how people lived in the regions and how their farm and commercial buildings are built differently. And many pets are apparent. In 1978, the open-air museum was opened with initially 16 museum objects. By 1985, there were already 61 buildings. And a painted pharmacy from Ticino, apparent in the blossoming meadow, relates the history of naturopathy here. Right next to the port of Brienz, there is also the small train station from where the breathtaking ride on the Rack Railway takes you up to the Brienzer Rothorn. The ride ascends quickly past the last houses on the hillside, and lake and village are only visible deep down. The ride in the modern observation cars of the historical Rack Railway is an unforgettable experience. The passengers don't know where to look first, so varied are the views after every bend. On a passing siding halfway down the route, the small steam locomotive is waiting for us to pass. Our train continues determinedly onwards, through ever more tunnels. And on the 7.6-kilometre journey, the landscape constantly changes. It rises by about 2,000 meters, and for an hour the views are entrancing. This is followed by a green alpine pasture region where grazing cows enjoy the lush herbs and flowers. Slowly the rock displaces the alpine meadows and the first white patches appear. But nothing can stop the small railway. Now the snow and ice begin to appear. Sometimes a snowplow is needed to clean the tracks and to clear the last stretch to the summit, even in summer. The region is reached where year-round eternal ice dominates the vista, despite the fact that a swim in the lake in the valley looks tempting. Here too, the railway construction engineers have achieved exceptional and daring results. Spectacular views of Lake Brienz now prevail, and before it, the lower spikes of the Rothorn. The route leads increasingly upwards, finally overcoming this daring height. The train spectacularly surmounts curve after curve en route to the final station, where the next guests are already waiting for departure. We have arrived. There are only a few steps to the summit. The Rothorn of Brienz is one of the most beautiful mountains in the Emmental Alps. From Interlaken west, the river Aare flows like a canal to Lake Thun. It connects with the neighboring Lake Brienz and runs through the town. The trip with the steamboat connects the most important stations. Such as the Beatus station on the northern shore, from where a rather steep path leads up to the Beaten Hill. Up to the entrance of the Beatus Caves, where the Irish anchorite monk Beatus lived in the 6th century. The path into the interior of the mountain rises further and further and connects small caves with bizarrely shaped stalactite formations. Somehow the overwhelming view of the Lake Thun has a calming effect. The round trip continues to various boat stations. Some stops belong to the smaller places, and others to those where tourism has already taken hold, and the corresponding infrastructure meets the needs of the guests. The Lake Thun is narrow and stretches for about 18 kilometers. On the less sunny southern shore is Spitz, where the 12th century castle of the same name reigns over the headland. Once again, the lake is crossed until the small town of Gunten is reached, which has also discovered tourism. Onwards past the lake castle Oberhaufen and the city of Thun is reached at the end of the lake. The gate to the Bernese Oberland, the wild mountain river, has always provided the city's economic well-being, and they finally succeeded in taming it. A healthy grown town around the medieval Castle Hill. Crowned and protected by an over 800-year-old castle. The castle has the most imposing Romanesque residential tower in Switzerland, with its 4 round corner towers. The 5 high floors are partly inhabited. The magnificent view from the highest windows of the castle's corner towers over the mountains, city, river and church is overwhelming. A paradise of the Alps. Late Baroque arcaded houses frame the town hall square, over which the castle seems to be on permanent guard. Civic pride and wealth of the Middle Ages is visible even today. The path leads back along the inner Aare to where the young town exists. The town on Lake Thun, whose rich history tells the story of lake and river. Interlaken is also the departure point for the Jungfrau region. The Bernese Oberland Railway to the settlements in the valleys of the region has been in existence since 1890. Lauterbrunnen is a transfer station. It's a small place which is surrounded by steep limestone walls. From here, the Oberalp Railway sets off up to Wengen. In the land of railways, even the mountains are widely accessible by rail. Soon the starting point in Bern's mountain world has reached Wengen, which is located at almost 1,300 meters above sea level. The view from the railway station is overwhelming. The Oberalp Railway was not only there to connect with the valley, because there was no road, but also to serve as a shuttle to the Kleine Scheidegg, an ideal starting point for a railway into the high alpine mountain world. This station was built at 2,061 meters above sea level. The trains continuously bring their passengers up here to the transfer point. From here, the famous Jungfraujoch railway begins, a rack railway to the highest railway station in Europe, past the Eiger Glacier station and then into the long tunnel. Ijsmeer is a stop in the rock with views into the breathtaking world. Soon the highest station in Europe is reached, and a reminder of the planner, Adolf Geyer-Zeller. A round tour begins. The visitors crowd into the Sphinx Observatory on the uppermost rock needle. Everyone seeks to experience the engrossing view of the mountain peaks and ice fields. This is the high mountain world of Eiger, Mönch and Jungfrau. Those world-famous mountains which also became legendary through mountaineering tragedies. The second part of the tour in the mountain is called Alpine Sensation. And so on to the Ice Palace, a hall carved out of the glacier ice with ice sculptures, and an exit to the world of the high mountains. The stay on the Jungfraujoch is strictly limited by time. All visitors need to reach their designated train for the return journey. At the Kleine Scheidegg, one must decide on whether to go down to Wengen or to Grindelwald. This trip leads to Grindelwald, with a view of the Lauberhorn, passing the north face of the Eiger. The further down the train approaches the Valley of the Black Lucina, The more the snow and ice fields disappear and give way to the lush green of the mountain meadows. Alpine huts appear in increasing numbers, which are managed and lived in, especially in summer. The landscape could be out of a picture book. Grindelwald is reached. Again, it's necessary to change to the Berner Oberland Railway, which runs back to Interlaken along the Black Lutine. Through the valley to the Zweilutschine station, where the white and black Lutschine meet and flow together into the Aare near Interlaken. Bern, the capital of the Swiss Confederation. The compact old city centre is situated on a narrow, rocky ledge protected by a bend in the Aare River. The landmark visible from afar is the late Gothic Minster St. Vincenz. The Minster is the largest sacred building in Switzerland. The construction of one of the most valuable late Gothic church buildings in Northern Europe began as early as 1421. The interior is simple and yet majestic, with unique vaults and carved choir stalls. To the side of the church lies the Minster platform. From here a lift leads down to the Matter district, with its typical houses of the craftsmen and ferrymen. At the top, the Nidegg Bridge leads from the old town across the Aare to the opposite hill, with an impressive view of the bank and upper town. The moat is home to the town's comical heraldic animals, who are more than happy here. The legend tells of Duke Berthold, who shot a bear here and then named his town Bern. Protected from three sides by the river valley, the town only had to be fortified with walls and gates towards the west. Typical for Bern are the arcades, which run along both sides of the alleys and are in total 6 kilometers long. Number 49 Kramgasse was once home to the world-famous physicist Albert Einstein, who worked on the theory of relativity. The Berner Town Hall is a remarkable work of late Gothic architecture with the external stone flight of steps. And next door, the St. Peter and St. Paul Church, the first Catholic church in the city after the Reformation. The impressive Bundeshaus on the promenade, overlooking the wooded Aare Valley, is a popular attraction and a place of peace and quiet. The Bundesterrasse ends in a small park which was created around the Kleine Schanze. As an idyllic environment for the Universal Postal Monument in remembrance of the seat of the Universal Postal Union. The Heilig Geistkirche is one of the most important Protestant church buildings in Switzerland. Also inside, a typical example of the Bernese late Baroque with neoclassical elements. In the middle of the Baden Square, which was originally a moat, rises the defiant Kager Tower. This tower was formerly the city gate and later on also served as a prison. The Zeitglogge Tower was also a city gate, the second oldest building of Bern. A Baroque defensive tower with a famous calendar and music box. The internal mechanics remain unchanged to this day. And the views from the tower window are fascinating. Prince Berthold died without heirs, the citizenry took over, and by 1218 Bern had already become a free imperial city. In the 16th century, the diligence and pride of the citizenry of Bern led to its deserved centre of power. Today, neutral Switzerland is a popular meeting place for international negotiations, and also a first-class tourist destination, where the white peaks of the Alps, subtropical surroundings of the southern lakes, or places of culture and history, Switzerland has variety to offer. A season-long dream destination which invites visitors from around the world. Switzerland is a diamond that shines in every light.